There's a moment in every transformation when the fear hits hardest, not at the beginning, but right after something inside you clicks. Right after the meditation that opens your heart. After the moment you finally feel aligned with the future, you. After the realization that something has shifted, and just when it feels like you've cracked the code, suddenly the fear crawls back in. The thoughts begin racing. The nervous system starts reacting. Your body contracts. You question everything. You feel like you're regressing. But this is the moment most people get wrong. Because what you're experiencing isn't failure. It's friction between your old identity dissolving and your quantum self beginning to emerge. Most people assume alignment means feeling calm all the time. That once you match the frequency of your dream reality, the rest will be easy. But that's not how quantum shifts work. In fact, the more powerful the timeline you're stepping into, the louder your survival system screams on the way in. This is biology meeting consciousness. The body's job is to keep you alive based on what it knows from the past. But manifestation, by nature, requires you to break the loop of familiarity and step into the unknown. Your nervous system isn't resisting your dream. It's reacting to unfamiliar signals that threaten its control. The same way your muscles resist when you stretch beyond your normal range, your subconscious resists when you stretch into a new identity. And that's not weakness. That's proof you're expanding. This is where most people collapse back into their previous self, not because they're not ready, but because they don't recognize this resistance for what it really is. A call to regulate, not retreat. A call to stabilize your frequency, not because something is wrong, but because something is working. And here's what no one tells you. Fear doesn't mean you're off track. Fear, when observed without judgment, is an indicator of transformation. It's the residue of an old self being dislodged by the presence of a new you. Let's go deeper. According to quantum physicist Amit Goswami, the quantum self is not bound by the limitations of time, space, or personal history. It is a field of infinite potential, a part of you that already exists in alignment with your highest truth. But to access this self, you must collapse the possibilities into form through intentional observation. And that observation must be coherent, not distorted by fear, panic, or the need to control the outcome. That's why emotional regulation isn't just a tool for healing. It's the bridge between your current state and the version of you who already lives the reality you desire. Joe Dispenza explains this beautifully. Your body responds to your thoughts as if they were real events. When you think fearfully, your body goes into survival. When you think in alignment with your future, your body recalibrates to that new possibility. But this recalibration isn't instant. There's a moment where your body is still addicted to the chemistry of your past, even as your mind is choosing a new direction. That's the gap. The sacred discomfort, the space between identities where your nervous system wants to pull you back, and your soul is asking you to stay. So here's the truth. Staying aligned doesn't mean eliminating fear. It means recognizing fear as a signal, not of danger, but of departure. You are departing from an identity that was familiar even if it kept you stuck. You are leaving behind neural pathways that were wired for limitation. You are stepping beyond the gravitational pull of who you've always been. And the fear isn't a stop sign. It's a sign you're in motion. So when fear interrupts your shift, you don't need to start over. You don't need to question your worth. You don't need to force yourself back into high vibration. You need to pause, breathe, observe the fear without becoming it. And remember, your quantum self has already made the leap. Your only task now is to stay coherent long enough to meet it. This is the beginning of a new relationship with fear, not as something to eliminate, but as something to listen to, decode, and alchemize. And in the next section, we'll go deeper into what's actually happening in your subconscious when fear arises, and how to navigate it without collapsing your frequency. Fear is not the enemy. Fear is feedback. It tells you that something new is happening inside your energetic architecture, something the old self doesn't know how to survive. But here's the paradox. The fear isn't coming from your quantum self. It's coming from the conditioned body that was trained to associate stability with limitation. This is where the leap gets real, not in your vision board, not in your meditations, but in your biology. Your nervous system wants safety, and anything unfamiliar, no matter how aligned, how expansive, how divine, can feel unsafe if it's not what your body is used to receiving. This is not sabotage. This is survival instinct. Amit Goswami calls the quantum self the bridge between consciousness and potential. It is not attached to form but to awareness, and the moment your awareness begins to shift, through intention, repetition, or elevated emotion, you begin to access that bridge. But that access doesn't always feel like bliss. Sometimes it feels like disorientation, like heat rising in your chest, like tears without a clear source. Because your body has to catch up with your choice. Your old patterns start to break down. The programs that were silently running begin to crash. And that crash, that shaking, that dysregulation, it means the field is receiving a new signal. That is quantum flow in action. Joe Dispenza teaches that the subconscious mind governs 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old. That includes not only your habits and beliefs, but also your biochemical addiction to emotion. So if you've been living in survival mode, hyper-alert, reactive, skeptical, guarded, then even joy will feel threatening. Peace will feel foreign. Expansion will feel uncomfortable. The body will scream for what it knows, even if what it knows is suffering. This is why people who begin manifesting love often feel unworthy. Why those stepping into abundance start panicking about loss. Why those calling in freedom suddenly feel lost. The subconscious is not resisting you. It's asking, are you sure we're safe here? This is the spiritual work that no one glamorizes. The recalibration of your nervous system to accept peace as normal, to accept joy without guilt, to breathe into expansion without holding your breath, waiting for the collapse. You are not just choosing a new timeline. You are teaching your body to live there. And that requires regulation, not as a task, but as a devotion. It means noticing when your breath becomes shallow, when your jaw tightens, when your thoughts speed up, and gently guiding yourself back, not to perfection, but to presence. So let's make it real. When fear arises in the middle of your shift, what's the first signal your body sends? Is it your stomach tightening, your hands getting cold, your chest closing? The key to staying aligned is not ignoring that signal. It's responding to it with consciousness. Place a hand on your heart. Slow your breath. Tell your body, I know you're scared, but we are not in danger. We are just expanding. You don't push the fear away. You sit beside it. You love it. And through that love, you reclaim your signal. When you do this, something subtle begins to shift. The fear doesn't disappear, but it transforms. It becomes data. It becomes a guidepost. It reminds you that the leap is happening not only in your vision, but in your cells. You are not just visualizing change, you are becoming the embodiment of that change. And embodiment, unlike fantasy, has weight. It moves through muscle, breath, memory. That's why it takes practice, not force. Not perfection, just practice. Now I want to hear from you. If you're comfortable, share in the comments. What's the emotion, the sensation, or the pattern that tends to pull you back when you're on the edge of a breakthrough? When we name it, we take its power back. When we share it, we collapse the illusion of isolation. And when we see it in each other, we remember, no one is shifting alone. Let's keep going. In the next section, we'll explore what's buried beneath the fear, the unconscious patterns, the emotional echoes, the forgotten wounds that rise not to stop you, but to finally be seen. The body resists, yes, but so does the unconscious. Because when you begin shifting into a new identity, the mind doesn't just question your ability, it starts bringing to the surface every fragment of self you abandoned along the way. This is why quantum leaps often feel like emotional ambushes. You begin to align with your abundance, and suddenly old voices whisper that you're selfish. You try to embody love, and unresolved shame rises like smoke through your chest. You commit to living freely, and a part of you tightens in guilt, as if you're betraying someone by becoming more of yourself. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This is not just philosophy, it's the lived experience of shifting timelines. When you enter the quantum field with clarity, you don't just access your higher potential, you also activate the parts of your shadow that were wired into your sense of self. And they don't want to sabotage you, they want to be acknowledged, to be held, to be integrated. In the context of quantum jumping, this means that every time you leap, you awaken pieces of yourself that were silenced by survival. They may show up as fear, self-doubt, jealousy, even anger, not because you're broken, but because these parts of you were built to keep you safe in an outdated environment. They learned to shrink so you wouldn't attract criticism. They learned to please so you wouldn't be abandoned. They learned to numb so you wouldn't feel the pain of rejection. And now, as you stretch into a new field of possibilities, those old survival codes start to fire again, not to destroy you, but to test whether you're truly choosing something new. The test isn't external, it's vibrational. Are you willing to stay centered when your inner child panics? Are you willing to hold your frequency when an old wound reactivates? Are you willing to respond to discomfort with presence instead of performance? This is the real work of consciousness. Not bypassing your fear with love and light, but meeting your fear with maturity, gentleness, and truth. And here's the most powerful truth of all. The shadow isn't trying to pull you back. It's trying to join you. Those scared, rigid, hurt parts of you aren't obstacles to your expansion. They are the parts that need to be brought into coherence with your expansion. When you integrate those pieces instead of rejecting them, your frequency doesn't just rise, it stabilizes. Because now you're not leaking energy in the form of internal conflict. You're unified, you're whole, and wholeness is magnetic. Imagine this. You're standing at the threshold of your desired reality, and fear rises. Most people try to suppress it, but you do something different. You sit, you breathe, and you say, "I see you. You're welcome, here. We're going anyway." In that moment, you're not just jumping, you're leading yourself. And that leadership becomes a signal, a vibrational signature the field can respond to. Because the quantum doesn't need you to be perfect, it needs you to be clear. Clarity isn't the absence of fear. It's your willingness to move with it, to breathe through it, to carry it gently instead of letting it drive. This is the inner revolution. The shift that sustains itself. Not because you've eliminated every shadow, but because you've stopped abandoning them. And that is what makes you trustworthy to the timeline you're calling in. You're not faking it until you make it. You're healing it until you embody it. That's quantum integrity. And it is felt far beyond the words you say or the affirmations you repeat. It's in your gaze, your breath, your posture, your presence. And once your presence becomes coherent, once your energy stops fighting itself, the field has no choice but to organize around you. And that brings us to what may be the most important part of the leap, knowing how to stay in the flow when everything inside you wants to retreat. Not forcing, not controlling, but gently recalibrating, continuously, lovingly. That's where we go next. You already know how to visualize, you already know how to set intentions. But the real leap happens when your inner world begins to tremble, and instead of running, you remain. You witness, you feel, and you choose not to collapse. That's the moment when you shift from being a student of manifestation to becoming the embodiment of quantum presence. Not by forcing the fear out of your system, but by staying with it long enough for it to transmute. Because here's what most people don't realize: regulation is not about suppressing your emotions. It's about staying conscious while they move through you. It's about being the observer without losing your center. When you stay conscious inside discomfort, when you soften instead of harden, when you breathe instead of brace, you are literally sending a new signal to your nervous system. You are training your body to feel safe inside expansion, and that is the foundation of sustainable transformation. You don't need to be in a perfect emotional state to stay in alignment. You need to be honest. You need to be compassionate with yourself. Alignment is coherence, not control. It's the decision to keep tuning into the field of your future self, even while your old self whispers fear. This is the balance most people miss. They chase a high vibration thinking they must always feel euphoric. But the field doesn't respond to your mood. It responds to your consistency. Your job isn't to be fearless. Your job is to be fluent in your own energy, to know when your heart is closing and to gently open it again, to know when you're acting from survival and to return to trust, to know when the mind is spinning stories and to drop back into the truth of your breath. In those tiny choices made again and again, your new reality is formed. The quantum field doesn't operate on time, it operates on frequency, which means your desired timeline is never far away in linear distance. It's a shift in vibration, and that shift often happens subtly, quietly, in the moments when you choose to stop reacting and start breathing. It's in how you stand up from your chair, how you respond to a difficult message, how you hold your spine when doubt creeps in. Those are not small details. They are entries in the vibrational code you're emitting. Let's make this tangible. Imagine you're deep in the middle of your quantum shift. You've been visualizing. You've been practicing presence. But suddenly, something triggers you. A memory, a setback, a comment. Your stomach tightens, your chest collapses, your thoughts spiral. In that moment, you have a sacred choice. You can collapse back into the old timeline, or you can pause. You can inhale deeply, exhale slowly, and remind your body, we're not going back. You place your hand over your heart and whisper, we are safe. We are expanding. And I am choosing to remain. This is how quantum flow becomes your default, not by resisting your waves, but by learning how to ride them. When your body wants to close, you soften. When fear pulls you, you recenter. You don't suppress emotion, you feel it all the way through without losing your signal. And in doing so, you become more than a manifester. You become a transmitter, a stabilizer of timelines, a creator of coherence in a chaotic world. When you choose to regulate instead of retreat, your field becomes magnetic. Your timeline stabilizes, and the quantum responds not just to your desire, but to your devotion. And if you've come this far in the journey with us, if this message has met you where you are, and you feel something real shifting inside you as you listen, then consider joining this space by subscribing. This is more than content, it's a transmission, and you're not just watching, you're participating in your own shift. Let's keep going. In the final part of this journey, we'll bring it all together. You'll see how everything you've felt, faced, and navigated is not pulling you away from alignment, it's refining it. And the truth is, you're already further than you think. You made it through. Not just through this video, but through something far greater. Your own internal resistance. That subtle wall between who you were taught to be and who you're now becoming. And even if it didn't feel dramatic, even if there were no fireworks or emotional breakdowns, you still shifted. Because every time you chose presence instead of panic, softness instead of defense, breath instead of collapse, you jumped. And quantum jumps are rarely loud. They are most often made in silence, in the stillness of the decision to stay aligned. No matter what, there's a misconception that spiritual growth is linear, that once you learn the tools, you'll never fall again. But falling is not failure, it's feedback. It's the field reminding you that your work is not to escape human emotion, but to move through it with a higher frequency. Alignment is not a permanent state. It's a living relationship between your awareness and your vibration. Some days it flows, some days it wobbles. What matters is that you keep returning, again, and again, and again. Because returning is the ritual. Returning is the leap. And the more often you return to the signal of your quantum self, the more natural it becomes. Not because the fear is gone, but because the fear no longer leads. You do. You've probably realized by now that the version of you living the life you desire was never far away. That version wasn't waiting in another country or another decade. It was vibrating on a different channel right here, right now. And every moment you regulate, breathe, and choose your new frequency, that version steps closer, not as a fantasy, but as your embodied identity. This is how real transformation happens, not by force, not by perfection, but by practicing truth inside of chaos, by remembering who you are when your past calls you back, by choosing to honor the version of you that sees beyond fear and still says, "We continue." And when you do continue, when you refuse to abandon your shift just because fear whispers louder than usual, you become something rare. You become trustworthy, not in the eyes of others, but in the field itself. The universe begins to respond to your consistency. It meets you with new clarity, with aligned opportunities, with unexpected openings, because now your signal is no longer fragmented by internal conflict. It's coherent, it's magnetic, it's yours. There is no timeline you're not worthy of, no frequency that is too far to reach. The quantum doesn't gatekeep possibilities, it simply mirrors what you embody. So if you're listening to this right now, and a part of you still wonders whether it's working, let this be your confirmation. It is. Every time you choose to pause instead of panic, to breathe instead of brace, to observe instead of react, you collapse another loop. You unhook from another old pattern. And that is the leap. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're not too late. You're in motion. You're remembering. You're unfolding. So take a moment right now to recognize that, to soften your body, to exhale slowly, to anchor back into your timeline, not with desperation, but with devotion. And maybe, just maybe, you'll feel it, the subtle electricity of a new reality humming just beneath the surface, the quiet thrill of choosing alignment when everything inside wants to run. That's your signal, that's your quantum self already holding the frequency for you. So what now? You continue. You let it build. You let it deepen. And when the next wave of fear comes, and it will, you won't be surprised. You'll be ready, not to fight it, but to breathe with it, to walk through it, to hold your signal steady until the field responds again. And it will. Because once you start shifting from reaction to regulation, from emotion to coherence, from survival to embodiment, the leap is no longer a theory. It becomes your life.